Okay, welcome back. So let's go right ahead to Dr. Lawrence Olumide, who is the president, National Association of Proprietors of Private Schools, NAPS Ogun State Chapter. He joins us via Zoom this morning. Good morning, Dr. Olumide, and thank you for joining us today on the program. So, yes, so much talk about this. The government at the moment say that they have met with different stakeholders, including NAPS, as to what they need to do to ensure schools get back on the July date. So tell us, what is going on at this time? What went on about that conversation?
Well, good morning. If I understand that question very well, you see, because of where we found ourselves in the country today and the agitation that schools should be reopened, considering the fact that we don't know when COVID-19 will leave Nigeria or the world. Because we cannot afford to remain static, life must move on. So there came guidelines to be used in ensuring that our children will be safe when they return back to school. New knowledge about COVID-19 has shown that regular hand wash, the use of face masks, maintaining social distance, and the rest can help in the curb of COVID-19. So we spoke and we said, look, if this is the new normal, can we test run the educational system by allowing the terminal classes to sit for their examination to reduce the level of depression they are going through? Because the anticipation of the student prior the advent of COVID-19 was that they would have finished their O-level examination maximum first week in July, maximum. And now, when we have that in place, it will give us opportunity to actually see if the educational system is truly ready to combat or to continue to open school to allow children to learn by observing all the guidelines that can ensure zero transmission of COVID-19.
Okay, now we understand your association was in that meeting from the statements, the comments out there by the Minister of State for Education. How did you all agree on the July 29th date, which is just 9 days away?
July what?
July 29. That's the date that we understand was agreed upon. Are you aware of that? July 29?
Yes, there was an initial pronouncement because, WAEC came out and said the West Africa Examination Council will commence on August 4. And that pronouncement, brought about the fact that, okay, school will resume because there is a pronouncement from WAEC that WAEC will commence on August 4. Now, we cannot just allow the student to resume back to school and then start writing exam almost immediately. So there was this request that, look, if WAEC will start by August 4, let there be at least some few weeks prior the commencement of that exam for the teachers to be able to go through some level of revision with the students. That was the position of NAPS, that it is not ideal. It is not good. These children have been away, they have been out of school. Some of them have been in the marketplaces. Some have been at home without even anybody to guide them in their conduct of, studying. So the pronouncement from the minister thereafter that it's possible that students may not write WAEC this year, obviously was like a bomb to those students and then their handlers that have started putting up structures and infrastructures in place to give them support in the course of the examination. So our association returned to the drawing board to say, look, if these students are not allowed to write this exam, now we are destroying their morale, we are dampening their enthusiasm, and the interest to education is being affected here. This is our position that, look, as a professional, When a child has anticipation, there is a vision, there is a projection that at so time, I will do so and so. If I am not able to do so and so at so time, then it will fall back on me to say, look, is there anything wrong with me or is something wrong with the system? Now, we are fighting for the interest of the child because the psychology of the child is equally important. Even if you make the announcement today now that, look, let school resume tomorrow, let the students start to write their examination, I can assure you that the teachers will have hell of work to do. We have to reconfigure the mindset of the student. We have to reposition them again to fall in love with their studies and their education. So this is the position of our association, and we have been clamoring, we have been saying this, that look, in the interest of the child, well, the point now is this. Will COVID-19 leave Nigeria today? We don't have the answer. Will it leave next week? We don't have the answer. Will it leave next year? We don't have the answer. 2 years' time, we don't have the answer. 3 years' time, we don't have the answer. If other sector of the economy
the issue here that my colleague asked is just to clarify, first of all, if you are aware and ready for the July 19 date that was pronounced by the Minister of State for Education.
Of course, we are
now
ready.
One of the just one moment. One of the requirements, according to the guidelines released by the Federal Ministry of Education, is that school resumption form that all schools are supposed to fill. Are you aware of that? And how many of your members have filled that form or can meet the deadline before, of filling that form and sending to the Federal Ministry of Education before they can be allowed to reopen?
Well, you see, we here, I don't know who is playing game. I have not seen any form from any government in Ogun State. I don't know if other states have seen that. If the government actually wants this to happen, if the government is proactive, they know what to do. How can you tell me that I should fill a form within the time space and that form has not been made available to me?
But are you aware, Mr. Lumide, are you aware of the federal government guidelines for schools to reopen? That document that was, that 52-page document that is titled Guidelines for Schools and Learning Facilities Reopening After COVID-19 Pandemic Closures. Are you aware of that document?
Yes, I'm aware.
The Annex A in that document is the second or third to the last page. It has that form. And it is what the Minister of State said when he said that schools will need to self-assess themselves and confirm whether or not they are safe to reopen.
Yes.
So, of that form, have you... Go on, go ahead.
I've seen it, but the question now is, do we have this form made available to school owners? Do we have this form made available even to public schools owned by the same government? They are just talking about it. The government should come out and point to so and so school that this form has been made available to. That is the point.
Has there been... ready? Okay, because I mean, the Southwest states have said that they will vigorously enforce the COVID-19 protocols as schools resume, such that students will not be in danger. So one would have assumed, has there been any meeting between the state government, education ministry, and maybe NAPS and other schools as well?
Yes, in Ogun State, the government constituted a 15-man committee to look into the guidelines, of which I happen to be a privileged member. That was the only opportunity I had to see the guidelines. And then the first meeting we had was the last. So we believe that government is doing something about it. So if government, you see, the point here is this: there are political statements and there are political wills. If there are political statements that is not backed up with action, then we are deceiving ourselves. Why should the government be deceiving us when they are not even ready? They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the instruments to say, okay, you want us to assess ourselves and see if our school will be safe for children to return. And then the same form that is meant for this same assessment are not available. Are we even sure that upon the completion of this same assessment form, government will look into it to consider that so and so school is safe for children to return back to school?
So
It's quite
After that meeting, which you say is only one and last meeting that you've held, has there been any notice whatsoever about any other meeting that is going to hold?
Yes, there was a notice that there will be training in Ogun State for school owners, for school principals. Okay, the meeting, the training has been organized by the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health by that schedule to start today with public school principals, and by tomorrow, private school owners, and then next tomorrow, private school principals. Yesterday afternoon, this training was called off. We received a notice that the training meant to prepare us for resumption had been suspended indefinitely. So, what are we talking about?
Any reason?
I don't know. Maybe I will know today. No reason has been advanced to that. This will tell you that the government is not actually prepared for reopening of schools. It's obvious.
Okay, now that's one. Secondly, so if government is not prepared, how about the schools themselves? Now, if you look at some of those guidelines, the highlights of those which were circulated, some of them were on the screen a while ago. One of them indicated that water, provision of water in schools, and ensuring that that is a constant feature. Is your school, for instance, up for that?
Can you take your child to a school without a source of water? There is no private school in Ogun State that is government approved that has no good source of water. In my own school, by the special grace of God, I have more than 4 boreholes servicing the need of the school, because we cannot afford to live and to have students without access to water. Water is life. If the government schools, if they do not have access to water, that does not mean private schools do not have access to water. Before your school will be given approval by government, the Ministry of Health will come to inspect your school and inspect your source of water. So all private schools in Ogun State approved by the same government, they have good source of water. By my understanding, you can set up an independent body to go around and visit school to see for yourself that we mean what we are saying. If there is any school that is not having good source of water, I doubt if such a school has government approval. And I'm sure Ogun State government will not approve any school without good source of water. So they have given approval to all schools that are capable, that have been able to satisfy the requirements of the Ministry of Education and that of government in the establishment of private schools in Ogun State.
Well, the thing is that there are schools that don't have those facilities. And as a matter of fact, it's not just the private schools that will be considered to reopen, several other schools. So it's a holistic action that they will take. So we're hoping that one action or inaction of one school doesn't affect all the others. So we're hoping that that doesn't happen. How do you plan to enforce social distancing in your school as well?
This is why I said earlier, we should ask the government, if we have public school at this age in this nation without wholesome source of water, it calls for concern. Be it private or public, it calls for concern. We should ask ourselves question. How can government establish a school? How can government give approval for a private individual to operate a school without good source of water? Now,
the question, Mr. Olumide, Dr. Olumide, just one moment. The question he asked is, for example, because one of the challenges that people have had is maintaining social distancing, even for the adults, the full-grown adults. But we're talking now about your school. One of the guidelines, one of the requirements is to ensure safe distancing, safe physical distancing between, the students in the schools. What's the plan for that in your own school, for instance?
All right, very good. By the special grace of God, my school is 26 years old. Paragon International School, Abeokuta. If you come to the school pre-COVID-19 era, the minimum student we have in a class in our school is 24. Because it is a structural school. It is a pre-planned school. given approval by government. The seating arrangement in our classroom is a student to a table. So if you are looking at maintaining social distance, pre-COVID-19 era, majority of private schools, standard private school, had been operating through this standard. There's no good private school where you will have more than 24 students in a class. And then don't forget that the measurement of a class as given by government is in meters. I think 12, that is 12, I can't really remember now, in the latitude of 24 feet to 18 feet, the size of a good and a moderate classroom. So in the public schools, they use something like this, but in the public school, we use a modernized plastic table where you have a table and a seat.
Okay. Now, given that, let's say that is a given, but it is one thing for them to sit properly and maintain that distancing. How about when they are not in class? How do they comport themselves? What's the plan to ensure that these children maintain this safe distancing among themselves when they are not sitting in a particular class, when they are, playing around in school? Because I don't know how you'll be able to manage for students not to play together when they're in school, even if it's just the exit classes.
As we speak, the children have been playing at home. Go to the streets. They have been playing together. They have been mingling up and down, play football, do all sorts. They go to the street to go and hawk. Some of them are already doing, this joinman job, what have you. Now, you see, the function of the school is to keep educating the child. We are not even sure when COVID-19 will leave us. Why can't we start to begin to educate the child on how to live with COVID-19 in case COVID-19 will not be leaving soon? So a school is a place where we will be giving them information, we will be giving them instruction on how to live.
Okay, well, it looks as if one button had just been touched, and so
is to continue to educate our children.
We lost you for a bit there, but let me just ask you this question, Dr. Olumide. What kind of challenges do you foresee as an association when the schools finally resume, even if it's just for these, exit classes, as we have been talking about? What kind of challenges do you foresee, and what's the plan to take care of them?
Yeah, number one is the children that have abandoned their education for a while will be facing with the challenge of, restoring them, reconfiguring them back to the school system. I can tell you authoritatively here that there is a distortion in the learning process of these children. And then the mindset of these children have shifted from their academics. So as a professional in this field, we first of all want to restore them. We want to welcome them back and assure them that they are safe, and that we assure them that it is time for them to abandon the days of wandering. They have wandered away. Of course, they have wandered away. So we have to bring their minds back into their learning activities. That is going to be a challenge, because some of them now, they have started making money on the streets, and that money is put onto them. And then for them now to begin to return back to their studies will be a brief challenge. Now, another challenge we have is that the morale of our teachers has been dampened. The morals of teachers that have not been paid salary for the past 2 months, 3 months in some instances, is already affected because they are hungry. Now they believe that the nation they serve through education cannot cater for them at a time like this. It's a serious matter.
So, assuming your school were to reopen, if the government allows all of those, how many students are you expecting back?
Well, in my school, I register 52 students for WAEC. And I have facility, my school has facility to accommodate 650 students. So a facility of 650 students will only be used by 52 students. That is what we're talking about here in my situation.
Okay, did that take into cognizance provision of the COVID-19 referral centers?
Of course, at a large scale. Because before COVID-19, at every block, there is access for students to access water. We have points where students will wash their hands regularly. So in my own case, I have an oversized facility for education. An oversized facility for education. And I believe this is applicable to majority of school owners that knows their salt, that knows their onion.
What is your thinking about school fees payments? Are they going to pay, because there's that conversation that's been going around now, whether or not they should pay fees, what percentage should they pay, how should they be coordinated?
That's a different topic entirely. What we are talking about there is that we are more concerned of the education of the child. The age of the child cannot wait. The growing up of the child cannot stop. All right, the appropriate skill to be infused into a child for a particular age is vital, is key to their development. And when you skip this portion, then you end up producing a mal-educated adult. So the issue of money is not key. It's not the issue of money that is key. It's not the issue of money that is more important now. We are talking of the future because we don't know when COVID-19 will leave us. So let's begin to learn how to live with it in case it's not leaving us soon. So I'm not particular paying net of school fees. I'm particular about the education of the child. I'm particular about the safety of the child as well.
Dr. Olumide, I'm not sure that's the way some teachers, some private school teachers feel. They feel that money for them is also very, very important. As you would know, many of them also have school fees to pay, children to feed and all of that. So when you say, some of them listening to you now, when you say that money is not so important, they are asking questions in their mind, don't you think?
Well, to every business, there must be a source of revenue to keep the system running. All right. Now, I am not ruling out the fact that money is essential. But what we are saying, what our association is saying, our teachers are suffering. Some of us too, our life has been affected, our means of livelihood. Yes, but that is not our primary reason for agitating that the education of the child must not stop permanently. There must be a way out around it. When that is restored, then we can come to a round table with a parent to begin to say, okay, now that we have our children back to school, how do we fund the system? How do we fund the school? That is what is ideal as far as I'm concerned. And as I can assure you that majority of us in Ogun State, we share this same sentiment. I am not ruling out the fact that there are school owners who may take that as priority. Well, individual differences, but the education of the child is more key, more critical to us than that money. We live on the money we get from the parents, but at a time like this, we have to look into what benefits the nation than what benefits individuals.
Well, it's good to know that money is not the chief concern for you or for your school as well. But just give us a moment. We'll come back and get your concluding thoughts and other perspective on this matter as well. Do stay with us. So there you go. You need to do stuff. Just look at the calendar. Look at the roads. Use the maps. Whatever information you need to get a lot of it because I tell you, you'll need it. All right, let's get back to this conversation now. Dr. Olumide talking to us about preparation for resumption of schools, meeting up with those guidelines, the protocols that they have agreed with the Ministry of Education to allow graduating students get back to school to take WAEC. Well, Dr. Olumide, you were talking about how money is not the chief consideration. Good to know that, but could you then tell us, yes, we heard you say that, but in terms of percentage, there will still be some fees. Parents need to plan. People need to plan some of these things to know what to expect moving forward. So in the event that the schools are back, what will the thinking be? What should they prepare their minds for regarding school fees payment?
Well, why are we talking? We are talking about this issue because the government had failed us. The COVID-19 had made it possible for us to know that in Nigeria, we are on our own. The teachers that have been teaching in private schools are payers of payee. School owners pay money into the coffers of government in the name of taxes, expecting that at a time like this, we have support from the government you have been paying taxes to. Now, it is unfortunate that neither the school owners nor the teachers in the private sector had been helped. We therefore ask, of what value as our commitment to the Project Nigeria in the payment and remission of our taxes to us, if government had risen to the occasion by supporting private concern, putting money forward at a time like this should be secondary. I still strongly believe that money is not the primary reason why we should agitate for the opening of schools. Whether from parents, because don't forget that the same parents we are talking about have equally been affected by this same COVID-19. Some of their businesses have closed down. Some of them, even working in the public sector, are yet to receive salary for the month of June. So if we open back schools today, and then you now want to force those parents to pay the money they don't have, it is not fair. This is why I will want to challenge every of our leaders to think and look far into the future. Let us look beyond now. What of if we have a situation where we cannot even go out of our respective buildings for 6 months? That the situation is so critical that look, this thing is airborne. That once you leave inside of your house, you have contacted the disease. That means we will all die for nothing. So it is time for our beyond today to see when we have a situation like this in the future, how can we protect our citizens?
All right, Judge, hold on a minute. Let's bring in Yomi Farime. He is a consultant for that particular sector, the education sector. Good morning, Mr. Farime. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Now, the ministry, they're talking to stakeholders, giving them this July date such that they will prepare to reopen, having spoken to some countries. They say they've spoken to about 4 countries on agreeing what to do with WAEC moving forward. So you've looked at this yourself. Do you think that they've taken sufficient measures now to prepare and not put the students in harm's way upon resumption?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege, and also appreciate being here today. I think one thing we need to first ask ourselves is, what exactly is all of this about? Is the goal for our children to go and write exam or to go and learn? Because I really don't understand where the balance of the argument is. The universities have been shut down. Our universities are not operating because of COVID. So if you are rushing students to go and write WAEC, those students are supposed to go to those universities that are shut down. So why are you rushing students to go to a school that is currently shut down? And then we've had arguments around, the school are there. The question we need to ask ourselves is, we know our health capacity. Do we need to deceive ourselves that things are not bad? We know our health capacity. There are state government, for example, a couple of months that all COVID people that are affected by COVID were kept in hospitals. But, for example, the Commissioner for Health in Lagos State shouted a long time ago to say they didn't have capacity. And if the numbers kept growing at that number, they were going to have excess capacity. And they had to change strategy just because the number kept growing. How do you deal with growing number of cases? And that's when you now feel it's appropriate to take students to school. There are a couple of things we need to be very concerned about. So there's a lot of talk from school owners and school proprietors saying our schools are ready. question to ask is, those students are going to commute to school. Public sector analysis and solution finding is to look at the whole value chain. So assuming the school is safe, and we know the schools are not safe, we know those schools in a normal situation, they are not safe. Assuming the schools were safe, right? How would that child get from his house to the school? It's something we need to also factor in. There are children that stay in Alagbole, Akute, and school in Ikeja. They take 2 bikes and take a bus to get to work. We just heard today about closure of a part of the Third Mainland Bridge. How will those children cope with that? How will the teachers commute to work and the people that support the school system? So it's not just about the schools are ready, it's about the whole value chain. And let me ask a question. The private school owners are saying their schools are ready, but we know that the majority of our students are in the public schools. We know that for a fact. Based on data from WAEC, over 20,000 schools will be writing WAEC in Nigeria. 20,000 schools. If you do the maths, the number of people that have been involved in logistics, carrying scripts, supervision, invigilation, lab assistants, lecturers, teachers, chief invigilators that have been involved. I did a calculation and I saw that we're going to likely have an excess of between 500 and 1 million adults involved in that process in Nigeria, moving around, supervising schools. You know, sometimes the person that comes to supervise physics is not the person that comes to supervise geography, is not the person that comes to supervise home economics. So you're going to have teachers in a place like, the invigilators in a place like Lagos moving around and going around. Who has assured or looked at this, the movement to be sure that they can do that safely? I think just analyzing this by saying my school or our schools are safe, it just doesn't talk about the whole picture. We are not ready. There is no point we're taking a risk to send children to schools that is just to write exam. I understand if it's to learn, but not just because of an exam, to go to universities that are locked down.
Document put out by the Federal Ministry of Education. I don't know if you have seen that. Well, let me hope that you have seen that document and probably even gone through the 52 pages. Are you saying that that document does not capture the entire value chain of education and consequently needs to be reviewed?
You know the funniest thing about that document? The document says the schools should get themselves prepared and do a self-assessment and send the result of the self-assessment to the Ministry of Education. Question: which school is doing those self-assessments? Is it the schools that we know? We know our schools. We don't need to deceive ourselves. Is it the public schools that we know the capacity of the school in terms of, are they the ones going to do the self-assessment? We're going to be relying on opening on schools based on self-assessment of some people that already have vested interest on why the school should be opened. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics came out with a report last week on what how Nigerians are responding and handling to the COVID situation. And one of the findings was the fact that one of the areas where Nigerians struggle the most to be able to keep themselves, respect all the rules of social distancing in terms of regular washing of water of their hands and using soap to wash their hands. And the major reason that was given in that report, the report is available to the public, was because people could not afford soap. Those are parents with their children at home that could not afford soap. How do you now want to say a public school will be able to have that ready? So I've looked at those provisions, I've looked at the guidelines. They look safe. They look like it can take us to an extent. But, you know, the challenge is that most of those guidelines are similar to the ones you have seen in other countries. Now, in those other countries, those schools were safe. They are just making them safer for COVID. In our own situation, our public schools were not safe. We were in this country where children were abducted from schools. We were in this country when the former Prime Minister of England started the initiative on Safe School Project. Our schools are not safe before COVID. So using therapies that have made schools that were safe to become safer will not help unsafe school become safer. That's just the point. The gap is so wide. We have schools that don't have fences. So one of the things there is that, okay, each school should start to think about having provision to be able to test students on a daily basis for their temperature. How do you test students every day for the temperature of a school that doesn't have a fence? When some students come from the south, some come from the north, some come from the east, and some come from the west. How do you check temperature every day? How do you ensure that there is adequate water supply in those schools? Finally, and this is also to the private school, because quite a number of the private schools are really talking a lot about the fact that they are ready and they are prepared. And the question to ask is, how do you know you are prepared? You did some things and you concluded a single child can cause problem for you. The bigger challenge is that, okay, so one school ahead, the school proprietor was saying that what they were going to do is that they're going to ensure that their children wear the face masks, and they're also going to ensure they have the face shield. And I just asked a very simple question. I said, are there air conditioners in your school? He said, yes. I said, and you're sure that that is good for your children who are asthmatic? Because in that same class that you say you have an air conditioner, you have asthmatic children. Are they going to be wearing shields and face masks?
All right, we do thank you for those thoughts. So those are important considerations that we all need to take on board, the stakeholders inclusive, if we need to meet up with that deadline. So we thank you both, Yomi Farimi, Education and Human Resources Consultant, as well as Dr. Lawrence Olumide, who is the President, National Association of Private School Proprietors of Nigeria, Ogun State Chapter. Thank you both for talking to us this morning.